Hey guys, Nicole here with Obscure Reptiles and Caging, and today I'm going to tell you a few different things to think about when you're making your reptile room. So let's get started. Hey guys, so today we're going to be going over different options for your reptile room. So the biggest thing to start off and consider is how big are you going to get? How many animals are you going to have? What kind of animals? What species? A big thing to consider is if you are going to make a room that is for one specific type of animal. So for example, I have ball pythons as a majority. I heat the reptile room up to 78 degrees, so that way their cool side is no less than 78 degrees no matter what. But if, for example, you have a bunch of ball pythons, you decide you want to get a few corn snakes, you have to keep in mind that that room might be too warm if you're going to heat the room. Another thing to think about is, are you going to heat the room or are you just going to heat the enclosures? Since I am in a basement level, I chose to heat the room. That way I know it never gets too cold, but because it's in the basement, I have to run a dehumidifier sometimes. Those are things to consider if you are going to be making a reptile room that is down low. The reason why we made the choice to move down is we were on the top level of our house. It's a two-story house. We were up top and it was just too warm. We have central air, but it was just so hot because of all the heat that all the animals put off, mostly like the Ackie monitors and bearded dragons, that it was just too warm, and we actually had to run a wall AC unit on top, or a window AC unit on top of having central air. And the way that our upstairs is set up, they're really the only window it worked. The AC just kind of poured down the stairs because there's no door or anything preventing it from leaving that room. So we made the decision to move it downstairs, and it worked very well. Now we'll stick with, let's say, ball pythons. There are different types of cages you can do. These right here, these are Sterlite bins. These are obviously smaller for babies, but we've got these bigger ARS racks as well. Which, another thing, moving everyone down here, we were able to do taller. So these are actually 10 level. The only thing I'm going to do specifically is I'm going to cut these off at 8 level, and I'm going to have more racks that go that stay at 8 level, because I'm never going to be able to see up here without, like, for example, a ladder, and our ceiling is right here, so without having to pull every bin all the way down to see the snake or feed the animal, I'm going to be stopping right around 8 levels, and I'm going to be using the top as storage. So that way I can have a little bit more storage space, can keep the animals a little bit lower, and that way there's not a huge difference for temperature. If you're going to do racks and stuff, that's something to consider also. Something tall like this, the cages up here are going to be significantly warmer than the cages down there. So we're up to, this is the 7th level and down. Everything's doing really, really well. So again, I don't want to get too high because I know up here is going to be much hotter than it is down there, especially being in a cooler basement. Even though the room is heated, we want to make sure that animals aren't getting too warm or too cold. When it comes to babies and hatchlings, it's not a big deal, not difficult for me to, pull it down. But when these very large bins are full of, a pretty heavy snake or 2 snakes that are breeding, plus water, food, water dish, hide, that would be a pain. So 8 level, I'm 5'6", and this is as high as I'd want to really work with the animals. Honestly, I love 7 levels and down, but just for sake of space, this isn't a huge room. I'm going to do 8 levels going forward in the future. You can also do things like enclosures. So now you can also do setups like this. These are for our boas. These are front facing. These are 4 by 2 foot deep by 16 inches tall. We have Duma boas, and then we've got our albino blind boa up here. This is one other option. You could do things like this for ball pythons. You could do 3 by 2 by 1s, 4 by 2 by 1s, 4 by 2 by 16s. But you want to make sure you have a ton of hides. With these boas, you can't see them, the dumerals, because you have so much bedding. They love to hide. Plus, they have a hide and basking spot. The blind girl, because she can't see, it doesn't really matter to her whether the lights are on. There's no hides, but she does have a hide and basking just like these guys over here. Another thing to think about is storage space. This room is not very large. That rack or shelving unit next to those cages you saw, that's pretty much all my extra stuff, where I have extra water dishes, vitamins or calcium powder for the dragons and the Ackies. We've got like extra pens, we've got stickers, shipping boxes, water bowls, anything and everything that you might need for the animals are on a little shelf like that. The only thing I wish I would have done would buy a shelf with doors. That way it would look a little bit more clean in here, just because there's just so much stuff on that shelf and it tends to get a little bit messy, a little bit crazy, especially when I'm trying to pack up animals and we have a lot of stuff going on. But you do need some storage space, especially if you're going to have a good amount of animals. If you only got one or two, you're still going to have a little bit of storage space. You might have extra water dishes, extra pieces of cork bark, the box the animal came in, or if you're ever going to ship the animals, you have to have a place for the shipping boxes. If you have stickers, you're going to be a business, you need shipping bags. Anything and everything, it's nice to have at least a little bit of storage space. Something I really recommend that I got since I moved down here, this right here is actually a HEPA filter. So the reason we do that is to keep air quality super clean in here. Every time we go to clean or go through these animals, especially the bedding can have a little bit of dust. That thing is hooked up to automatically turn on when it senses dust or anything that it wants to clean. It's actually right next to the garbage can, which if you're throwing away after these animals go to the bathroom, you don't want anything to smell, especially like urate, stuff like that. We take it out as soon as it gets full, but we keep it right next to it just as a backup. It actually just turned on. And it just helps make sure everything's super clean, and I think it's awesome to have. You only have to change a filter maybe every 5 or 6 months. Something to think about for your reptile room is, what is your floor going to be? So this was my wife's art room, so she painted, so there are paint stains all over the place. And every time I do stuff, like I just did a cleaning video before this, there is little bits of Reptichip, gaps bedding all over the place. And it would be really, really nice if we had like a hardwood floor and I could just sweep up, but instead I have to vacuum. We break vacuums pretty often because of how big the gaps bedding and stuff is, because you do make a mess. Anytime you go to take a snake out, they could knock some bedding when you clean. I just organized a bunch of different snakes and upgraded them, which made a mess. So think about your flooring, especially if it's going to be somewhere like a basement where it's cold. You might want to make a subfloor, something above. If you think your basement could flood, make sure that your animals are up high, or you have a backup, like we have it's called a guard dog, something like that. It's a backup sump pump just in case. Those are the type of things that you're going to want to think about when making a reptile room. Another big thing is safety. So we've got a fire extinguisher over there, right here. This is our CO2 detector. We've actually got one down low also because it's a basement. And this is a fire alarm also. But it's Bluetooth, so it hooks up to my phone via Wi-Fi. And if that goes off and I'm at work, I will know that my smoke alarm has gone off, and it tells you what it went out for. If it was someone hit the test button, the battery's running low, it detects smoke, it detects anything, and maybe it was $45, $55. Something I'd really recommend, along with always have something like a fire extinguisher in the room. The only time we ever needed something like this is we had a PVC enclosure with Ackies. Someone was looking at our animals. We had a couple people walk through, and somebody bumped one of the domes, which slid it off the screen onto the PVC, and it ended up making, when the heat turned on in the morning, because the light was turned off at night when they were walking through, it ended up causing the room to fill with smoke. It didn't actually light on fire. All the animals were okay. Luckily my wife was home. But this went off. But that was before we had this, and again, luckily she was there, and that's what made me purchase this. It's a really nice buy. I'm not sure what brand it is. I think it's one of the Groove ones, but super awesome to have for a reptile room. Something that takes up the most amount of space, that is used the least, is the baby rack. So once you sell all your babies at the end of the year, there's nothing that goes on back there. And for example, my adults take up pretty much the amount of one adult rack takes up the room that this baby does. But for example, let's just pretend your baby or your snakes have 10 babies each. Normally they have smaller clutches, but just for easier math, let's say you have 10 females having 10 snakes. That's 100 babies. This huge rack right here only holds 72, and then I've got a 36 on the side of it. So we have, or could have, a total of 30 females that fit in this rack if completely filled. Now we have 30 times 10. We need 300 spots, so I need to actually have half of my room dedicated for babies, which most of the year we don't have babies. Most of the year this runs and only has a couple of our holdbacks up at the top. So make sure you have enough room. Make sure you don't get too many females and then realize you don't have space for baby racks. It's a really good idea to figure out how many baby racks you're going to need, so you or have space for, so you know how many females that you can actually purchase. If you go and you have 100 females but you've got a small bedroom and you have nowhere else to put your baby ball pythons, you won't be able to breed most of them. Or you can, but you're going to have nowhere to put them. Some people like to actually put their rodents in their reptile room. I do not. I keep them outside. I do not. I keep my reptiles just reptiles. I don't like my snakes being able to smell rodents all the time. I find when I do actually heat up some frozen thawed, bringing down some rodents, whatever I'm doing, they smell it and then it gets them into that prey drive and it kicks it into gear. If you keep your rodents with your reptiles all the time, they smell it all the time, it's not as exciting, tend to not eat as vigorously. Sometimes they do, but that's just my experience. Plus rats, mice, ASF, no matter what, they do have a bad odor to them. You can clean them every single day and you're still going to be able to smell those rodents. So that's something that I don't like to do. Some people like to keep it all together. I don't really have too much of an odor in my reptile room, except when, for example, we have dubia, roaches, crickets. For the bearded dragons and ackies, they will have a smell to them, and I like to put them, I have them on a little cart and I roll them over here, keep them by the HEPA filter. But your snake should really never smell. Your ball pythons, your ackies, your boas, they should not have an odor to them, because you check them every couple of days. You can check them every other day, every day. But I normally check 3 times a week for, you know, spot cleaning, and then I do a full straight up clean every 2 to 3 weeks, depending on bigger females. For example, they go to the bathroom a lot. I more or less do like if they go to the bathroom towards the back of their cage, I'll just take out the back half of all of the bedding and put some new in there. Some snakes like to go all over the place, and you got to do full cleans every single time that they go to the bathroom. All right, and one last thing for you guys to think about and consider is, what is the noise level of where you're putting those animals? I have some friends who love to blast music. They love to have really loud party stuff like that. That's super awesome. But if I was to keep my ball pythons in that room with the loud bass, the loud noise, the commotion, all the stuff like that, a lot of my animals probably wouldn't eat as consistently as they do. It would stress out some of the younger ones. They can sense all the vibrations, they can hear all that type of stuff, especially with like loud music. If you're playing, let's say you got a big sound bar for your man cave and that's where you're keeping your animals and you're watching really loud movies. Stuff like that. Or let's say you have little kids and you have your snakes in the living room where the little kids are running around a lot, screaming and, you know, making a lot of noise and commotion. That could affect your animals. So try to pick a location that is nice and quiet, nice and calm. That's why I like to give them pretty much, I'm as far away from noise other than hearing like the washer and dryer go off as possible. Make sure you think about that when you put your animals someplace. Some animals, like let's say you have one ball python, it's in your living room, you have kids, loud noise, and it eats, lives perfect, it thrives, that's fantastic. But if your animal isn't really eating very well, you move and change things around and now they're in a louder area and the animal seems to be affected, you really want to reconsider where you have them. Find a nice quiet location, maybe like a bedroom, something like that, or just get your own reptile room like this. I know not everyone has one, but make sure you think about that when you're either designing a reptile room, thinking about getting a reptile, all that type of stuff. But that's it for this video, guys. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments below. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We do a few videos every single week. So I'll see you guys in the next video.